Hello, everyone. We are still figuring out who's the moderator. So we are all the moderators today. And we are happy to have you all here, to have you listening to our thoughts that we want to share with you. I think we start with a short introduction round. And as I was the moderator, somebody else has to start the introduction.
Hi everyone, my name is Jess Williams and I'm the founder of Opearlo, that's Opearlo, and we are a voice design agency, so that means we build AlexaSkills, Google Actions, all voice apps basically for large brands, and we also have an internal product team developing our own AlexaSkills.
Hi, my name is Bradley Metrock. I'm also, just like Brett, I'm here from across the pond, the United States this morning. One of the things my company does is owns and operates something called VoiceFirst FM. It's a podcast network for the new era of voice computing. We have a lot of different shows. We view ourselves as, in many ways, as the storytellers of this new era of voice. And we are pleased to have a little bit of news this morning. We've got 3 new shows coming online, one out of London called VUX World, one out of Canada called Alexa in Canada, and one out of the United States, a husband-wife show called Talk to Me. So if you're looking for narrative aspects of voice and what different companies and individuals are doing in the space, go to voicefirst.fm.
Hey everyone, I'm Quentin. So I've been building voice applications since 2015, just at the beginning. So my main project was a messaging app for Alexa, kind of a WhatsApp for Alexa. So it was quite popular on the store. It was called JAB. JAB, and so I just shut it down like a few weeks ago because it was hard to compete with the main Alexa Messenger. I'm also doing running a website called AlexaSkillsStore.com. So it's kind of an official Alexa Skills store, but it's quite cool because it lets you know what are the most popular Alexa skills, and it's sending like a weekly newsletter with the best new Alexa skills. And I'm also writing books. So small books on how you can better use your smart speaker, because it's pretty hard to know all what you can do with it. Like so many stuff you can do, and I'm just gathering all this data in one book. So you can look for Google Home on Amazon.fr to get this one, and I have a bunch of these, so you can come to me and I'm gonna give it to you. And that thing, so now I'm more focused on the French market, like building voice applications for in the French language.
Hi, I'm Tilmann. I'm the co-founder of Future of Voice, a startup based in Berlin. And we have been building voice applications for a few years now. And in the last year, with the Amazon Echo and the Google Home coming to Germany, we are focusing on this voice assistants now. We are working with big brands and trying to find user-centric use cases that make sense on voice, and that we can deliver to the customers and bring a smile to their face. And I think that's a good start here today, and to discuss now our topic, why every company needs a voice application. And I'm very interested to see if we have very different opinion about that.
You want me to start with that?
Yes.
Why does every company need a voice application? I think Brett did a really good job talking about that, as Peter did as well. You know, if you don't, essentially, if you don't have a voice application, then your competitor is going to. So it's just flat out that simple. But separately, as Peter alluded to, we've got generations of young people in the U.S. and every other market now that Alexa and Google Assistant are getting into, that just have the expectation of being able to interact with your brand, your technology, your anything with voice. And so in addition to young people, we also have people on the other end of the spectrum, older folks, as well as people who have accessibility-related reasons who are coming to rely on this technology more and more. So there's countless reasons why you should have a voice application, in my estimation, and with VoiceFirst FM, we've cataloged a lot of those reasons and a lot of interesting things that people are doing in the space. But at the end of the day, if you don't have one, a lot of people are going to miss out on what you're doing. You're going to miss out on a lot of learning that you need to be accumulating internally, and you're just going to end up a lot worse off.
I'm not the moderator. I think we are having a conversation about that, and I think it's good if somebody has a question to somebody else here, then we should discuss that.
I can be the moderator. Like
yeah.
I remember we had a bunch of questions in mind. So
that's good.
Yeah. So the first one we can talk about is actually what you were talking about. So does as a company, do I need to have a voice application? Like what's your opinion, Jess? About it?
Yeah, I think definitely, as Brett and everyone has said, like having a presence on voice is super important. And, you know, in 5 years from now, whether it is a third-party voice application or whether it's like a presence of voice or a voice interface, whatever any one of those is, there's definitely going to be a need for every company to have a presence on it. And I think right now, the way to do that is by building an Alexa skill or a Google action. And even if it starts off as something small, and I think you touched on a key point there for me, one of the main reasons, as well as your marketing, is just the learning internally, because it's a whole new platform. And so you need to be learning at the same time that everyone else is learning. You know, if you start in 5 years, other people will be 5 years ahead of you. So even if you don't think, you know, you have the perfect use case, or you're not, 100% convinced, even just going for something small and starting to acquire that learning internally is really important.
Tilmann, what do you think?
I think the answer is not why, the answer is how many. Because I think you have to figure out the right use cases. And voice will be there, will be around us, and so the company has to figure out in their customer journey where they want to provide value to the customer, where they can deliver this with the right context of the user information they have today, and they want to bring that out to the customer. And I think it's not so much about which device you're on, if you're starting with a Alexa or with a Google action, or if you're integrated with your call centers, but you have to make sure that you use the the channel voice and automate there to provide value to your customer.
Okay, and yes, so in my opinion, like if you see Alexa and Google Assistant as a search engine, I think any business here is doing some kind of SEO work to be well ranked on the Google search engine, and we can see that there are more and more people using voice to queries about any stuff. So you don't want to miss this opportunity to gain new customers and bring awareness to your brand, and even as a brand, you'd rather control what does the assistant says about you, rather than have some random Wikipedia description. So I really think, as a business, you need to it's not like today's the user base is still rather small compared to the mobile user base or even the desktop web user base, but with more and more you can't miss this opportunity to be there. So I'm gonna ask the next question. To Jess, what is the primary information and functionality a company should want within a voice application?
So I think for me, they fall into two categories. The first is content-based, and the second category is service. So what I mean by that is either your voice app needs to have engaging content that the user can find, within the first 10 seconds of interaction. Or if maybe content isn't right for your company, you need to look for maybe a service that you can provide. So, for example, is it checking a flight, booking a taxi, something where you're on a web or mobile might take 5 or 6 clicks, and it's annoying to do, like checking is the metro running on time, something like that, where that is actually much quicker to do by voice. And if you're not maybe a service-based company, it's about content. So what content can you create? Or what content do you already have that you can adapt for voice that a user would kind of benefit from hearing or enjoy listening to through Alexa? And on the content one, the number one aspect is not to just kind of give 10 tips, for example, and think that the user will come back every day and hear a new tip. It's you really need to think about how you can update your content on a daily or weekly basis so the user doesn't hear it twice. And if you can make your content, deliver your content not in Alexa's voice, so you can put audio clips within Alexa, you can do streaming, you can even use kind of different robotic voices, Amazon Polly and Google as well. And so if you are able to pre-record things and create this kind of audio experience, as well as providing engaging content, that really makes for a great voice application.
Tilmann, your opinion about the single feature as a business you should have?
I think Jess gave a very, very good answer about that, and she mentioned most of the very important use cases. One thing I would like to add is think about the triggers as well. Like you can have a skill or an action that is wonderful, but if there's no trigger in the daily life of your customer, they won't use it. They won't say the words to launch this experience. And so this is something you should always consider, and every company should consider this. And so I think there's not the one use case that every company should have. It depends on the customer journey of the customer.
Brother,
Yeah, Jess gave a fantastic answer to that. I guess you'd start, the question is what information should be in your voice application. I guess you would start from the standpoint of, where you don't want to be, which is just a regurgitation of your website. I mean, and I think either Peter or one of the Google folks showed, you don't want to sit there and read a bunch of stuff or have it read to you. That's horrible. Most people don't even want to read that information on your website in the first place, much less have it regurgitated to you by voice assistant. So you're looking for interactivity. You're looking for smart, intelligent, conversational ways to engage your users, engage your customers, engage your potential customers. The way that we got into voice was publishing clients of ours asking how should we be leveraging this technology. And so from the standpoint of what was in Brett's presentation about content and how content makes its way into this ecosystem, there's things, you start by just getting it in there, and then you can start to learn and layer things on top of it. No matter what your company's doing, that process of iteration is pretty much going to look the same. You start with your core information, and you just start figuring out things to add next and next and next until you build up to an experience that is habit forming and something that somebody wants to keep coming back to rather than just ignore.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you picked up on, the trigger point, as well as what your voice app is going to do is thinking about when people are going to use it. Right now, people use their smart speakers mostly in their home, so you basically have the morning and the evening where you can assume that most people are in the household. So, and I even think that, going to the detail of thinking, is someone going to use this when they wake up, as they make breakfast, before they go out the house? Is it when they come home and they just want to relax before, going into their evening routine? Is it just before they go to bed? Identifying those exact moments can also really help in creating those trigger points, because notifications is obviously difficult on the platforms. So you really need to try and think of the external triggers that you can leverage for people to keep coming back to your voice app.
Now we will take questions from the audience. So take the opportunity to ask some experts about any questions you might have for building applications.
5 minutes, and then we can go and take the pause. So let's make it a bit interactive. So if you have a question on why every company needs a voice application, you can challenge them.
Thank you very much, guys. Very, very interesting and informative. What 5 industries would you say are the most important and the most relevant for, or the 5 industries that need voice application and they have the best sort of use case scenarios?
Good questions, Sina. Appreciate that. So, short answer is I think voice technology is going to impact every industry, but I interpret your question as sort of what's the low-hanging fruit? What are we going to see first? I think there's incredible applications we're seeing with healthcare. In fact, we're working on getting ready to launch a healthcare-specific voice event over in the United States for later in the year. Things like senior citizens feeling isolated and people feeling depressed and needing somebody to talk to. People who have different conditions that have to be monitored on a daily basis and establishing a conversational dialogue to facilitate the recording of that information. I could just go on and on. Publishing is another one. We have a belief that every piece of content that's ever been written, that's being written now or ever written in the future will need to live in the Internet of Things, and so the conversational interface is the way that that's going to happen. And then as that happens, it will become more conversational, more interactive. If you can talk to a book, what does it say to you? What do you say to it, and what does it say back to you? We view that as low-hanging fruit. And then you see interesting stuff like on VoiceFirst FM, we did a show recently with a guy named Alex Fleetwood running a company called Sensible Object, who's integrating voice into board games. So it's impacting everything, and those are just some examples. But I would start at least with those.
If you look at the most used features on voice on smart speakers, I think it will give you advice on what are the best companies that have a kind of product market fit with the smart speaker. So the main use case is obviously music. Most people are using Alexa, Google Home to listen to music. So it's kind of obvious, but it's a huge opportunity for Spotify, Deezer, and so if you are a small actor in the music audio industry, this is a huge opportunity for you to increase your awareness. And then I'd say smart home, the smart home industry. So as Brad said, with the Internet of Things, like smart speakers are great opportunities to easily trigger things in your home. Like at first, we had like smart bulbs with Philips Hue, for example, and you'd rather use an application, a mobile application, to turn on your lights, which was finally like more cumbersome than using the usual switch. But with voice, it's way easier. Then you could have like productivity tools, like note tools, shopping list, or calendar, the agenda. So all about productivity, communications tools, sending messages, emails, and yeah, to finish this with this maybe. Or any content-based media companies would have a huge opportunity to be there in smart speakers. I'd like to have a focus. Like we often say voice. We always talk about the voice industry, etc. But for me, we'd rather change the focus more on audio, because finally, on a user perspective, what the user is listening to is audio, and you'd rather leverage what the audio can bring, how audio can also improve the experience.
So I have a question. Thanks for the insightful comments. Yeah, I have a question regarding like building conversational experience in itself. With the experience you have today, what do you think are the limitations of current platforms? What are the things that you find cumbersome to develop or to achieve? And what do you think is the next challenge for platforms to give better tools for builders?
That's a really good question. I think the number one that springs to mind is really hard to build in contextual awareness. And I think, in the future, hopefully the platforms will enable developers and designers to do that more by providing more information about the user that you can use in your voice app. At the moment, it's very limited. So you have to kind of pretend to build in contextual awareness, which means it can often not go to plan. And then I think the other kind of limitation is actually building a conversation. So, most of the apps, it's not a conversation you have with the app. It's like you ask for something and then you get it, and maybe there's a game. But again, a game isn't quite the same as a conversation. The technology is not at a stage where you can just be talking like I am now, obviously, and it responds and understands you. And so, if you're a brand and thinking of, if you're a travel company, for example, initially you might think, oh, I know, we'll let someone book a holiday on voice. But actually that just won't work because there's just so many back and forth and it's really slow. It's just quicker to go online. So it's about delivering something that is useful to the user, I'd say like within the first 10 seconds. And then afterwards, it's kind of like variations on that. So I wouldn't say we're quite at the stage of building an entire conversation. It's more about thinking the different aspects of a conversation, so the request and getting it within 10 seconds, but then everything around that of how it can go wrong and how different people ask for things. Hope I answered your question.
I would like to add one thing, that the call to get into this conversation is very clumsy today, at least in German. I don't know how it is in other languages, but I think that is something the platforms, they are working on that to change that with things like implicit invocations of applications that you develop. But that is something that doesn't feel very good today, and it's very hard to reach the user.
And I'd like to add one thing. Like we often think that the voice recognition is granted, but we have still this missing percent that sometimes the speech-to-text technology will not translate well, and it can be really cumbersome if you have like a complex application where the comments from the user are kind of what we call free speech, it can be anything. And if I do a comparison with a mobile application, imagine you had a mobile app and your button would work only like 9 times on 10. Like it will be really cumbersome. It's still, even if there were like huge improvement on this, like there's still some this missing percent of this improvement of speech to text technology, where actually Google is we can feel the difference between the Google voice recognition compared to the Alexa one. Like Google has those little percent of difference that makes the experience way better if you build complex applications.
Hello?
I'll just add one thing to that real quick, because those were great answers. One of the limitations that I see is just it's a market limitation. Amazon and Google are both moving at almost a historic pace in terms of the way the trajectory of this technology and the features that are added and the adoption rates and every way you can possibly measure it. And you're really starting to hit up on human limitations of understanding, and keeping up with it all. And that's one thing that makes VoiceBot.ai such a valuable resource, and one thing that we think makes VoiceFirst FM and shows like This Week in Voice such a valuable resource, is because this room is a room full of smart people who are very interested in this space. And I guarantee you we could sit here and ask you stuff specifically about the evolution of voice technology over the last 12 months, and there'd be a lot of people who would get all the answers wrong. Think about just consumers trying to keep up with the technology. It's extremely difficult because of how quickly it's moving, and so there's got to be a reckoning of, the market starts to move at a pace that the consumer can understand. I don't begin to know what that looks like, but it's definitely something that we view as a limitation. It's just at some point it's got to slow down so people can catch up, and so adoption can grow just beyond the early adopters.
Maybe one last question. Yeah.
Yes, hello, Romuald. With the press media, I have the feeling that with the smart home speaker and the very growing perspective of delivery, that voice is a new topic, but it makes decades, many years that I heard this sentence when I contact a contact center of a brand that, hello, to improve our process, please note that our conversation will be registered. So it makes decades. So what brands do with this data? Have you already seen brilliant use cases that you can share that have been leveraged on voice application that does not, so it's implementation inside channels of the brand and not necessary on smart home speakers?
I'm not sure to understand. You mean like doing like data analytics on the voice records of
a voice app on in-house channel and not necessarily on smart home speaker. For instance, hello, my name is Quentin, and this is my voice. So you are intoxicated, and it makes 3 times that I'm calling you for my consumer loan, for instance. So you have an expert. Leverage on the data from the conversation, will recognize you, identify the purpose and intent of your call, and that all these use cases, I do not see them, and it makes decades, as I said, that data coming from influence calls are registered.
Oh, you mean using like not building voice application for smart speakers, but rather for the phone support stuff?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I think there is a huge opportunity there, like actually to automate some phone calls. Like if you have a phone support, I've been thinking about this, like how to plug kind of what we build for smart speakers on like a phone line support to increase actually. I mean to save money for like a company that has huge expenses in customer support. Like you could definitely automate. All the regular questions you might have, and actually provide a service to your customers that is way easier than talking to someone and explaining your problem, etc. So yeah, I definitely see an opportunity there.
What I understood was that you were asking if we can share an application that allows that, and where is that application? And I'm with you there, that is not out there, because when you open up the space to every question possible the user can ask, you always run into problems, even if you can understand the text the user, or you understand the user what he said, then you have to extract all the information. And this is something where research is ongoing, and there are papers and they really make progress, but we are still not there where you can say, hey, take this open question with 15 sentences or 3 and I understand your problem. So I think that's the reason why we don't have these applications yet.
And thank you all for that. Sorry.